Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us. Well, I have been reading again The Body Keeps the Score. And I highly recommend, if you've read it before, to reread it too.
I read
because
it every year.
Yeah, it's so dense. There's so much there, and it's just really helpful in a lot of ways. And there was a paragraph that caught my attention when I read it. I'll read it aloud, and I'll tell you why it caught my attention. Trauma results in a fundamental reorganization of the way mind and brain manage perceptions. It changes not only how we think and what we think about, but also our very capacity to think. We have discovered that helping victims of trauma find the words to describe what has happened to them is profoundly meaningful, but usually it is not enough. The act of telling the story doesn't necessarily alter the automatic physical and hormonal responses of bodies that remain hypervigilant, prepared to be assaulted or violated at any time. For real change to take place, the body needs to learn that the danger has passed and to live in the reality of the present. Our search to understand trauma has led us to think differently, not only about the structure of the mind, but also about the processes by which it heals. And the reason it caught my attention was, I guess, because I felt like it wasn't completed. Because I think, yes, telling the story doesn't alter the physical and hormonal responses of the body, and for real change to take place, the body needs to learn that the danger is past to live in the reality of the present. And we talk about that a lot, but that's not all that has to happen. And there's so much more. And, being a trauma survivor is so complicated, is what it made me think. But I felt like that's not the only thing that we have to do for real change to happen. There's so much more that there is to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons I was thinking this is because it also talks about in another chapter how over half, the majority of the people who have experienced trauma, especially abuse, have guilty feelings, have feelings of guilt and shame about what they did when they experienced the abuse. They have feelings of guilt about that. And it just struck me how, yes, we can address the physical issues that we have because of the trauma and how we react, and we talk about the flight and fight and all the F's which
Fawn,
I think
freeze,
we
flap.
came up with a total of 6, was it? But
Five.
not only the responses, but there's the guilt and shame. Not only we have shame about what happened to us, but we have guilt about what we did, which is a huge one. And then all the other
Mm-hmm.
feelings. And another quote in the book, which I felt was important. Understanding why you feel a certain way does not change how you feel, but it can keep you from surrendering to intense reactions. And I think that's also important. It's very similar in that just knowing that you have these intense feelings and where they're coming from, it's very helpful, but it's then you have to kind of address where those feelings are coming from and why you're having them. And you know, it's so complicated, and I feel like for survivors of abuse, that feeling of guilt is a really hard one to overcome. One of the hardest things about telling our story is the feelings we have about what happened, but also about ourselves. and that's why it's so hard. But then when we tell the story, it doesn't change those feelings necessarily. Learning where those feelings are coming from, learning how to understand them and then address them. And I think it helps to reconnect with our inner child, which is also very difficult because of the feelings we have about our inner child. So there's just a lot more to it, but there's definitely steps that you take to get to the next steps. I feel like it's
Yeah,
such a complicated thing that we have to deal with.
it is. And I think telling the story is only the first step.
Hmm.
And, we say how, you feel so much better once you tell it, but still, that doesn't mean it goes away. And we're going to be talking with Laura Lamone, who is a psychotherapist, and she talks about family systems. And I think that that's what the beautiful thing is that we can't change it. Like we can know where it came from, but we can actually go back into that situation and change the dynamic
Mm.
of it with support and help. And I think that's where some real healing comes in because, the reaction story is, and especially we see this with men and boys, I'm never telling anyone, I should have beat him up, all those things. And so then that's still the story, even though you're starting to get well, that's still the story you're telling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The should, which is the shame of
Mm-hmm.
what happened. And, and I think that's why we push therapy so hard is because we can't heal in a vacuum because we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I work on the radio. And so I was listening to a couple of guest hosts today talk about ACEs, and they had some legitimate statistics, but they were talking about should former homeless people work with homeless people because they have trauma. And I wanted so badly to pitch in, but they were coming to one of them was coming to these conclusions, clearly had no experience. But he felt if you had had trauma, you shouldn't help someone with trauma. And I'm in the other room going, oh, that's so wrong, but it wasn't my show. It's like we're the ones that want to help. But also, if we're not doing our work, we are not going to help other people. We might actually help them stay stuck. But if we're doing our work and paving the way and stepping forward, like you're reading, you're always reading a book, you're always learning. And it's like when we're doing those things, then we can help others.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting what people who don't have trauma think.
Oh, yeah. And I get it to a degree in that if it's someone who's experienced trauma trying to help, like homeless people, huge majority of them have experienced trauma. There's a large majority of people who go to therapy who have experienced trauma. And, it's very prevalent. And to think that they can't help someone, well, if they're still struggling with their own stuff, they might not be real helpful. But again, I think we're in a process and we're probably going to be struggling with stuff a lot through our whole
Right.
lives.
If we wait till we're done struggling,
then we're never going to be ready.
Yeah.
So I think what's helpful is knowing how it's not just telling your story, but it's also addressing your physical responses, the fight and flight responses. But that's not it. That's part of it. But there's also addressing your inner child and your guilty feelings about what you did or what happened to you, the feelings of shame as well. And then there's the feelings of anger and the feelings of envy for not having what others had because you had to go through this trauma. Or, there's so many other feelings. And then there's learning how to regulate your feelings. I mean, knowing why you have feelings doesn't always mean, there's more to it when you want to regulate your feelings. And yeah, it just gets very complicated. And that's why I think other survivors helping each other is important because we understand the process a lot better. We understand that there's a lot more to it.
Well, and we understand behavior that doesn't quite gel with what's happening, where, we know someone in trauma might be responding, over responding, overreacting to a situation, but we understand why. Where somebody that doesn't understand is be like, what's wrong with you? Why are you overreacting? It's like we have that knowledge.
Yeah.
So I had an interesting conversation with some people who had been through trauma. And one shared something that happened. And he said he never wanted to ever tell that story again. And that even though he knows that it happened and we know when he was a child, that he wanted nothing to do with it. And he didn't want to think about it, didn't want to go to counseling, get help. It just, And then another person shared a story with me, and something about forgiveness. We were all in a group, had come up. And the comment was, I don't have to forgive anybody. It's not my fault. And I thought it's so interesting because these are very well educated people at different places in their recovery. And it just made me realize how the way I recover is not the way everyone's going to recover, that we do it at our own pace, and that even maybe some of the words, like, we say forgiveness, but maybe it's something different, because it's like, even forgiving, I talked a little bit about forgiving myself, and they're like, why would you do that? Why do you even have to do that? And so it's just interesting to me, the different phases of this. And you and I talk about it so much, but a lot of people don't talk about it at all. So they talk about it maybe to their counselor, maybe they've told a few times in their life, but they never want to use that story to help others because they can't see how it could possibly help. And it was just really interesting to me because I was sort of observing the conversation. And yeah, I thought, isn't that interesting? But I did feel glad that I knew they were telling their story to someone somehow. Yeah. And, I think what came from that is that that's what's important, to tell your story to someone. It doesn't mean you have to go and get up on a stage and tell everyone in the world, but that you find someone safe so that it gets out of your head. And also so you get a reaction. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when people tell me their story, it doesn't feel like, like someone who maybe had never experienced that would be like, oh my gosh. And a lot of times I go, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. But I realized when somebody shared something, I kind of gasped and was like, I am so sorry. That's so awful what you went through. And I think until that moment, that person really had not realized how bad what happened to her was.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's the value, is whether you plan to help somebody and write a book or go volunteer, or if you just go to a counselor and that's all you talk to and no one else ever needs to know, but that some way, somehow you tell someone.
Yeah, I think being able to talk about what happened to you is such a huge step. But again, it feels like it's just the beginning. And I think what this paragraph that I read, what struck me about it is it made me realize how complicated and how much there is when you're dealing with trauma, when you're dealing with abuse. Yeah. There's so much that is often not really even recognized by the person who's experienced it until they start going deeper, until they start looking at their feelings, until they start reconciling with their inner child, until they start, and there's all these steps. And I just kept thinking about it after I read that paragraph, because I was like, when it said, the part that struck me was, for real change to take place, the body needs to learn that the danger has passed and to live in the reality of the present. And I was going, yes, that's the beginning of the change, though. That's not the only change that has to happen. That's just the start. And like you were saying, that person who didn't want to tell their story, well, they probably experienced real strong emotions. And a lot of these emotions are often associated with body sensations that might be really uncomfortable. They might be experiencing panic, fear, all these other emotions. And that's why they want to be just one and done. Because, okay, I went back there, I'm done. But that's why it takes so much work to learn to recognize our emotions and learn to, manage them in a way that we can go there. We can experience our emotions in a way that isn't traumatizing. the
Yeah.
emotions aren't going to go away if you never talk about it again, if you never go
Mhm.
there again. Those emotions will come back.
Yeah.
And learning how to manage them and understand them so we can fully experience them
Yeah.
in a safe way. And then, yeah, it's just what struck me was it's just there's so many things that start to come up. You know, after you tell your story, then you address the fight and flight reactions, the body reactions. Then you address, you know, there's just and then and
Uh-huh.
and that's why I feel like people who are just want to be one and done or want to be just I can't go there. I'll maybe, you know, get some therapy, but I don't want to go back to that place, or I don't want to revisit my inner child because that's too scary, that's too strong an emotion. There's the holding back, it will not let you get free of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. In recognizing that it does have this power and it does activate us in different ways. And even in our 60s, even when we've done a ton of counseling,
Yeah.
still, and I don't say that to be discouraging, but if we do the work, we're going to catch on quicker. And if we don't, then we keep living in that. It's a vicious cycle of getting triggered, getting angry, not knowing what's going on, affecting all the people around us. And then
What?
eventually maybe it subsides a little and you're like, hey, I'm good. And then it starts all over. It's just such a vicious cycle.
And what really bothered me was thinking about all the survivors who are dealing with guilt. And I think that's a big
Yeah.
reason why people don't want to talk about
Yeah.
is they have these hidden feelings of guilt that they don't want to share with anyone.
Yeah.
The guilt of what they did or what happened to them,
Yeah.
what they didn't do, their
Hmm.
guilt in the situation makes it
Hmm.
even harder to talk about, so they just don't want to. But that guilt was not earned. They didn't deserve that guilt.
Mm-mm.
We don't deserve that guilt.
No.
And it's hard to get to that place without looking at and reconciling with your that little kid or
Hmm.
you know whatever age you were,
Hmm.
reconciling with them and reconnecting with them. Basically that guilt is
Hmm.
going to be there, and that guilt is really a stumbling block because it makes us want to just stay away from those feelings.
Hmm.
But those feelings, in order to learn how to manage them, we have to re experience them. Basically, we
Hmm.
have to explore those feelings. I
Hmm.
think in order to manage our feelings, we have to allow us to have those feelings in a safe way. And that's why therapy is so important, because that's one
Yeah.
of the ways you can re
Hmm.
experience and go back to that stuff. I don't want to say re experience, but to recognize and learn what those feelings are all about and where they're coming from. And if you're not going to allow yourself to have those feelings, you won't learn
Yeah.
about them. And then until you learn that about them, you can't learn how to manage them.
Well, and feelings are hard because we haven't let ourselves have them. And so now we're in recovery and we're saying, oh, and I'm going to have to feel more than just sad or mad. And so we get it like so many of the ladies I coach, they're like, I don't like these feelings. I'm like, yeah, I know, but just, sit with them, let them be whatever they are. And so many of the women are like, I don't like them. But then once they get used to feeling them, then all of a sudden they realize, oh, there's more than just two feelings, basically rage and or checked out. And so
Yeah.
when you think about it, that means like good feelings too, like joy.
Hmm.
If you have been so careful to not have strong feelings, then joy would be one too. Plus, because of our guilt and shame, often we think if we feel joy, we have guilt about it because we
Hmm.
shouldn't be feeling joy because of all of this.
Yeah.
Or, so even the good emotions we miss out on.
We suppress them because we're
Mhm.
so used to just suppressing all of that.
Yeah.
And what
Which is
really,
an awesome mechanism when you're a little kid.
when you need it.
Yeah. But now we're adults and it's like, that doesn't work anymore. You can let go of that.
Yeah, the part that really I think bothers me is it's not necessary and it's not deserved to feel that guilt or to have that shame. And yet, without doing the work to address it, to look at, to reconcile with it, it's going to be hanging over you. And it just bothers me because I know so many people suffer because they're not willing to go there.
Or they're so stuck in fear that they think if they go there, there's that, again, the amygdala that's like thinks it's actually happening again. And that's why having somebody that understands trauma or a counselor helps, because they help you get there without, we think, I've heard people say, I'm not going to go back there or whatever. And it's really not going back there. It's just acknowledging, but there's part of the child in us thinks it's going to hurt again. We're going to get in trouble again. But to unlock those doors and open them up and air out the rooms is so healing.
The hardest part is the initial parts. And that's because we're so afraid of what's going to happen when we tell our story, because there's that fear, all those different fears, the fear of shame, the fear of guilt, the fear of what our sensations, because oftentimes our feelings do create body sensations.
Oh, yeah.
We're afraid of those. And then when we are willing to explore them, then you realize there's more stuff to do.
Yeah, there's work to do. And, also, I always want to say, if you are in danger, that you want to find somebody very safe to tell. And, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's people that have come out from different religious organizations where they were abused as children, and they've had death threats. They've had to be very careful and align with somebody that can really walk you through and show you how to navigate. That's not always the case, but we've talked about this before. I lost my family when I spoke up, and I wasn't in danger, but it's pretty hard, pretty awful. In fact, when one of my relatives passed away, my first thought was, now they know. Now they know the truth.
Yeah.
Because, they didn't believe. So it is a hard thing. And I'm sad that anybody has to walk through it. But I am so grateful that there is help and support in so many ways now. There's so many different types of therapy. And there's not only counselors, but there's trauma coaches. And, there are so many ways to begin to get help. And I think we are seeing a movement of the younger generation maybe speaking out a little sooner. I'd really like to see the stats on that.
Yeah, I hope so. I believe it is. Yeah, I just want people to realize that it's so worth it, because holding it in, being afraid of it, hiding from it, just creates all these other coping mechanisms, because it's still there. It's still affecting you, but you're just coping with it in different ways. And when you learn about it and you don't have to cope with it in those unhealthy ways, and when you explore your feelings, and then you actually get to have full range of feelings and really experience joy and, happiness and just all the remarkable things that you've been shutting out because you're afraid of them. I wish that you could see what the difference would be if before you started, if you knew what a change could happen. And that's why this paragraph struck me initially, was just, yes, telling your story isn't the only thing, but dealing with your reactions isn't the only thing either. There's just more and more. But every time you get past one of these things and it becomes easier to handle those things, then you just get so much more out of life. You get so much more from your experiences than you were getting before. And that whole thing about the guilt really bothered me, because I feel like that is a feeling that keeps us from wanting to go there. When you're experiencing guilt, you don't even want to admit it. You don't want the tendency is to just hide that guilt because we're so ashamed of that feeling. And that is what makes it so hard to explore that. But to get past that is such a huge thing for your healing.
And when you've lived with it so long, I think there's a part of us like, who am I without this? It's like releasing it almost feels like, hey, well, I need it because I need to stay mad, or I need it because, and so it's kind of like, where would I be without all this guilt? Oh my goodness, I'd be free.
It's kind of like the feeling of that people hold on to their anger and
Yeah.
bitterness
Mm-hmm.
because they're going, well, I deserve to be angry and bitter.
Yeah.
But the guilt is tied to self-forgiveness. Until we're
Mm-hmm.
able to forgive ourselves, that guilt's going to be hanging on us. And same
Mm-hmm.
with the bitterness and anger. Until we're able to forgive the people that hurt us, we're going to hang on to that bitterness and anger, and it's going to eat us up.
Yeah. Well, and as they say in recovery, we're only as sick as our secrets. But Kevin, what I'm wondering is that paragraph that you read and what we've talked about tonight, what is it that you would say is like the big takeaway, the big like kind of aha for you in all of this?
I feel that if we can realize how hard it is for us to talk about this, what it takes is understanding why it's so hard. And I don't think most of us want to admit that we're feeling guilty or we're feeling shame. We want to hide that. But to get past that makes things so much easier, makes the healing so much easier. And the healing is so worth it. It's just getting past that big hurdle of guilt and shame that's so important.
Yeah, that's really, sometimes we don't even know that's what it is. We just know we feel bad, like everything's our fault. And yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that tonight. That was really good.
Yeah,
So this would
and
be a good,
it's funny because it's right towards the beginning. I haven't gotten very far because again, this book is so dense. It's got so
yeah.
much, and it's right towards the beginning of the book, and I was just like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
we need to talk about this.
I need to let that simmer a little.
But yeah, if you haven't read it, I think it's been a huge, big step for me to understand more about myself. And if you have read it, I do recommend reading it again because it's been
Definitely.
helping me.
Definitely. I agree. I know. And so often you read it and then you read what matters to you. And then the next time, because we keep getting better and better, and then we see things a little differently
Yeah.
the next time through.
Yeah, you
So,
spot things that weren't impacting you back then because you were so focused on something else.
right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, this is a good time for us to say our prayers.
Yeah. So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, I just thank you for all your blessings and the blessings of your forgiveness for us. No matter how we feel about ourselves, you've forgiven us. And Lord, I just pray that for anyone listening, they would learn to forgive themselves, even those things they are so ashamed of, that they feel so guilty about, for them to have that forgiveness so that they can release that burden in their lives, Lord. And I pray that if anyone's bitter or angry, that they would be able to get to a place of forgiveness so they could let go of that bitterness that is weighing them down and find freedom, Lord, in freedom in you, in your forgiveness and grace. Lord, I just pray for this people who are going through the trauma, that you would find a way to reach them, that they would feel comforted by you so they know that they can experience healing and they can have someone to reach out to. I just pray that they would find someone that they can share their story with and get on the journey to healing. In your name I pray.
Lord, I pray for those survivors who are suffering, who are feeling bad, carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, feeling like everything's their fault. I pray that you will just give them peace, help them to see that there is help, there is hope, bring someone into their life they can talk to, Lord. I just pray for doors and windows and everything to open up so that they might be able to experience the rest of their life in a healthy, joyful way, Lord. I thank you that you love us. I thank you for the work that you do. And I just pray that this will touch somebody who's really struggling. In your son's name, amen.
Amen.
Don't forget to go to our Facebook page.
Ah.
No longer ashamed.